Again, I want to thank you all for carving out some time. I'm going to briefly introduce Jeremy and let him add a little bit more context as he opens up a few slides. And if you do have questions along the way, feel free to either put those in the chat feature. I'll keep an eye on it. Or again, it's a small enough group. We'll have some time at the end for Q&A as well for you to share some questions with Jeremy. But Jeremy and I have a pretty long history with each other. I had the benefit of working with Jeremy. He was actually my advancement director, VP of advancement for the Catholic school that I was president at out in Omaha, Nebraska, until he did such a good job that Boys Town stole him away from me. And I have never forgiven Boys Town, but Jeremy is one of the most talented advancement professionals I have seen in all my travels. And I'm blessed to have him on this call today to share a little bit of wisdom. You know, within the advancement category, he does a phenomenal job on the estate planning side. At Boys Town, he is the director of gift and estate planning. As I shared kind of in the profile of this webinar, Boys Town currently has an endowment in excess of $1 billion with a B, and estate planning is a big piece of that. And Jeremy is just, again, very highly successful keeping that machine going at Boys Town for the wonderful mission that they do have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy, and he'll also go ahead and share his screen and get us started. So thank you, Jeremy.
Patrick, thank you so much. And no mention either of our Yankees and our Red Sox tradition.
How'd I miss that? Yeah.
I don't know. You know, we found out literally within like 90 seconds. Man, I'm going to lose you all right away. But he found out as a Yankees fan within like 2 minutes, and I thought I was doomed. He was never going to hire me. But you know, but I've kind of made up for it, because on this picture behind me is a picture of Father Flanagan with Babe Ruth, and you all know where Babe Ruth had some roots, right? So there's a connection there. I'm just trying to
go Baltimore.
All over. There we go.
They can't get out of the first round of the playoffs, John. Keep wishing.
There's no other sport.
They're very young.
And there's nothing else related to sports that we can talk to in the Northeast today. I mean, nothing else is going on.
No Belichick news. Let's get to that estate planning. Yeah.
I know. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to share my screen, and we'll get this thing started here. Click on it twice. Here we go from the beginning. All right, everybody see something that we're good. Thank you, Patrick. Okay, so I'm really excited to share this with you. I remember when I began 24 years ago, the whole development umbrella was very encompassing, and somebody said, "Hey, Jeremy, you should try to figure out which part you like. You know, is it planned giving, capital campaigns, annual giving, events?" And I wanted to be the planned giving guy. I thought there's so much value that you can add to donors working one-on-one and just helping them in ways that their own financial advisor or other type of advisors could not help them. And so I'm going to share with you what's worked well with Boys Town from when they began up through today. It's quite a long history. So really, just one second here. I got to play this. So really how it all began is back in 1917. Irish priest Father Flanagan came over to America, settled in Omaha, and he was going out at night in the streets of Omaha, and he was seeing these men who were, you know, cussing and gambling and fighting and carousing and with women. And he thought, you know, God, if I want to make a man, I got to first catch him as a boy. And the dream started to happen from that standpoint, because boys were coming to his door at his rectory asking for food, shelter, clothing. And pretty soon he was busting at the seams. He needed more room. So he went to his Jewish businessman friend, Henry Monsky, and was able to borrow $90 to get this plot of land to help boys of all different backgrounds, which in 1917 wasn't really the thing that was always allowed to happen. And so he found his own plot of land. It's about 160 acres. Now we're surrounded by Omaha, and it's you know, we've just been around for beginning our 107th year right now. So I want to share a little bit about the early years. And essentially Father Flanagan was doing all the fundraising from the start. He was really kind of our, you know, super salesman, if you will. But then it got to a point where Boys Town was nearly in debt. Well, it was in debt, nearly closed. It was 10 million under in the 40s. And so there was this new super salesman that comes along from Chicago, and he had a list to solicit, and he enticed Father Flanagan to include these new prospects to take Boys Town national. So if you can just imagine how you would reach out to local alumni and you weren't going national, what a difference that is. So Father Flanagan loved this idea in order to expand his vision and help more children. So this began in 1948, and by 1973, Boys Town had grown their endowment to $210 million, which was bigger than Harvard at the time, which, by the way, is at $51 billion in 2022. But Boys Town was one of the first in America to create a large endowment. Now, guess which investment guru in Omaha took notice?
Warren Buffett. Yeah.
Warren Buffett. And he didn't really like it. He wrote this scathing article in the Sun Times that said, Boys Town has too much money. Let that comment from him sink in just a moment. You know, the joke around Omaha is Warren does a great job making it. He's just, you know, not as adept at giving it away. He'll give it to his kids who are generous and helpful to Boys Town. But then, as we all know, he gives a lot of it to the Gates Foundation. But we overcame that. We're in good standing with him. He understands all that we're doing. So now what I want to share next is really kind of how we've evolved from when that period stopped. We had to find ways to continue to not only do our mailings, but start to think big picture. How to take the long road and think greater than just getting dollars back in an envelope. So what began to happen is we collaborated with the Mayo Clinic. Now they are a higher end hospital that treats rare cases in Rochester, Minnesota. And about 15-20 years ago, before I got here, they took a they told us to place a plain giving buck slip, and that's what you're looking at, by the way, in every acknowledgement. So every time somebody sent us a gift, we sent them back with the letter saying thank you, the IRS designation and language, and then we included one of these. And Mayo Clinic said, Boys Town, this is the single best thing you can do to promote planned giving. And at the time, the Mayo Clinic gave us a 5-year time horizon on that process. So in other words, they said, you know, you might see a spike up and then back down for the first 5 years of doing that. But then after 5 years, planned giving revenue should settle and maintain a higher revenue stream. So I'm happy to share that we are consistently between 15 and 20 million every year doing this since we started. In fact, as we just closed the books in 23, I think this year we're at 16 million. So doing my job to keep that pipeline full, but it doesn't just happen. So let me give you a real life story of how this would work. It's a story from a nonprofit that got a $5 million planned gift. And the nonprofit asked the lawyer how their donor knew to add them in their will, because the gentleman was never talked to. This was unknown to the nonprofit. And the lawyer told him, he goes, you know, the client walked in one day, he laid down this planned giving buck slip, had the organization's name, address, tax ID number, and he said, put this charity in my will for $5 million. Is it worth it? Now, the other thing we're doing as well, just so you don't think it's, you know, it's just all pie in the sky people with the money, we actually stay in front of the lapsed donor pool that we know is still alive. So in other words, we will mail the $5 donor who gives 3 times a year for 4 years, and we never hear from them. They don't want to hear from us, but they'll continue to give like that. And we had somebody like that leave us in their estate plans for $1.5 million. So again, you know, is it worth it? And yes, we do have about a 1.4 million active donors in our database, but we also, you know, we don't have the strong, probably major gift program that XBSS has in other areas. So you just go with your strengths. So in other words, how does this help us long term as we've been doing this? Well, Boys Town has a little over $500 million budget. We have a $1 billion endowment. So we take anywhere from 40 to 50 million every year to help the mission. And these are just some of the things we're very proud of. We just opened up our new school this fall to replace the old 75-year-old one, and just able to do different things and expand on our mission from the past 100 years. So it's a nice rainy day fund, but it also can help with your current expenses. So again, I want to talk about taking the long-term view, because this doesn't just happen overnight. When we send out mailings, the average gift that comes back is about $22. But our average estate gift is $55,000. So we actually have a goal for my plan giving team, where each gift and estate planning officer has a goal of 10 future estate gifts per year. So we're able to not only learn if they've made Boys Town a beneficiary, but then we're able to gently, deftly ask, what their intention of that gift is going to be. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But the important thing here is that the mailings, or I'd really say the consistency of messaging, just doesn't even have to be mailings. And the face-to-face visits are key. That's what the head of plan giving at Creighton University told me years ago, and I've just found that to be true. We can't do this from our office or behind our computer. And by the way, don't fall for the excuse that inflation is preventing you from doing plan giving effectively. I'd say budget. Have donors meet you at your office. Go to their office. Zoom. Meet for coffee. It's cheaper. But I'll also, as I go through these slides, I'm also going to share with you some tips on questions you can ask that involve plan giving while you're talking to them about maybe some of their part of your mission there at XBSS. So I think one thing that's very important to share up front too is that this really is a collaborative effort. Father Flanagan couldn't do it by himself, and neither can you as the head of the school or the development officer. You can lead the charge, but I'm sure you'll be grateful for some warm leads along the way, right? So the board, the faculty, the staff, they can all lend a hand. And as much as this is the primary responsibility of the development officer, it can't all fall on his shoulders. You need to help be the messenger. Inform your development officer of potential plan giving prospects. And I'll give you an example. Before I arrived to the school where I worked with Patrick, I was at a all-girls Catholic college. And the president of that college came into my office one day, and she shared with me how one of the professors she thought would be a good plan giving prospect. She goes, Jeremy, but I don't know how to get there. That's why I hired you. So you kind of figure it out. But she said, I think he's right for the picking. I said, all right. The crass language we use, right? So I invited the professor to lunch, got to know him, started to talk about the college and what it meant to him. Again, long story short, by the time we got to our next lunch, he had shared with me that he not only decided that he wanted to make the college a beneficiary of his long-term plans, he actually went to his attorney and did it. So again, it's just another example of how we as development officers can help execute that and help prod and move the donor along. But it doesn't hurt when we get leads, and we can certainly take it from there. So if you're a board of trustee on this call, I would say leverage your business acumen and connections. Some examples of that would be, help create a speaking opportunity for the head of school and development officer to speak at, say, like a Rotary Club or a local estate planning council, or other groups of professional advisors. And then one thing too that works really well for me and my team is we share bequest language cards with advisors for them and their clients. You probably can't see this as I'm showing it. I'm not certain, but I can certainly pass these along to Patrick and to your team. But essentially, it's a card that the donor, that you as the development officer would give to donors, so that they could go to their estate planning attorney and say, hey, here's XBSS's information, has their tax ID number, their official, mailing address, and information to make XBSS a beneficiary for them. It makes it real easy. So we pass these out like candy. They're really valuable. I don't know how else to say it, because you know what folks do? They delay going to their estate planning attorney to do their will. They delay till the very last moment. But you know what they do? What we found out? They keep stuff like this. They do. I've been in homes. I've seen the scattered junky desk and tables, but they'll pull something out like, yeah, I got this in the mail. I've been meaning to go see my attorney. I'm sure you development officers have seen this and are shaking your heads. Yes. So again, bring your ideas, trustee officers, or board of trustees, excuse me. Bring your ideas and solutions to the development officer, to the head of school, and let's collaborate on making something great to help these alum who want to do something more beyond their lifetime. Oh, and one other thing, I think we're all kind of aware with the cost to raise $1 in fundraising. For planned giving here at Boys Town, it's between 3 cents and 5 cents. So that's just been phenomenal for us. And for those of you that do deal with CFOs, first of all, bless you, but they like that number. So we're always in pretty good standing with them. They like that return. Okay, we're going to start getting into a little bit because I want to make you guys successful. I'm going to help you out here. I want you guys to get an edge. Here's something you can do, because I don't think this happens with a lot of development officers, but you can do this. If you have a local estate planning council, see if you can join. Get in front of the advisors who have the influence. And I would say if you can't join, try to break down the walls and see if you can get in. It's what I did 13 years ago. Now I'm the president this year. It can happen. So I don't say that to impress you, but as much as to impress upon you that we can influence, but we can't always execute. So why not get in front of the folks that can make it happen for your donors? And I'm gonna come back to that here in a little bit and keep building on that. This gentleman, if you're not in plan giving, probably don't recognize him or know him. His name's Russell James. He's the plan giving guru. The guy literally has written books and books, does a lot of seminars. He's a researcher at Texas Tech, but he has just really taken over the plan giving landscape and how to make it simple for people like us. And so the salient thing he's been sharing over the last 5-10 years is, hey, as development officers, don't just grab for the cash bucket. Find out what other assets they have that are not in the cash bucket. So gold, farms, land, homes. I had a guy use maple leaf coins, $75,000 worth of them, to fund 2 separate charitable gift annuities within 5 years. Now, yes, I know we're a little bit sophisticated here at Boys Town, but you can always find people to help you with that. My point is, what if a donor says to you, hey, I got this second home, I got all these capital gains on it. If I sell, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Oh, well, I can maybe help you with that. There's ways, there's clues, and there's cues that you can pick up on, because success does that, right? Okay, so what does the Zverian Brothers plan giving journey look like for you and your school? I want to start with the next slide, and then I can give you some talking points to share with donors. Sound good? Because this is where it gets fun. You can do this. All right, well, I take a little sip. Enjoy this quote. Okay, so who's going to ask first and last if they've ever thought of making XBSS a part of their long-term plans? You are. Because they don't want to do what you're reading on the screen. They don't want to do that. They don't. They're just waiting for somebody to ask. By the way, if you don't ask, you know it's going to. Probably going to their church, their favorite local charity, and then their children, because nobody else talked to them about what else they could do. So I want to begin with the scary thing. It doesn't have to look like this. You don't have to be this sophisticated. Now, you can certainly ask that question and go from there. But again, I want to make this simple. It takes courage to be simple in plan giving. And here's what it can look like. So this is a real life couple. I worked with them. They're in Des Moines. He's a construction guy. He was a construction guy all his life. She was a nurse. By the way, Bill and Marge did have a summer home down in Naples. So I think one of the folks on our screen is down in Florida. That was a good place to go around this time of the year. I'd specifically arranged to go see them at that time. But they, Boys Town and kids are really important to them because they couldn't have kids of their own. And whenever we'd have this discussion, there would be a pause and reflect moment when I'd ask if they'd ever, think about Boys Town as a beneficiary, or how they'd want to help kids, with Boys Town being a part of that. So again, you can do this. You can find maybe a couple or somebody through your who's already made XBSS a beneficiary that you learned of, and see if you can have their picture and see if you can get a little quote from them that you can share either on your website and mailings, such like that. Development officers, we love to, share what we know. But man, nothing says it like a really good testimonial. It's really true. Okay, I'm going to help you out. So here's how we get this going. It's really not too bad here. So what I'm going to do is share with you, these are some questions, some ways that you can kind of approach that plan giving conversation to see if they've ever thought about it. By the way, if you go to that last bullet point, who have been influential role models or mentors to you? Probably like, Jeremy, what kind of plan giving question is that? Well, here's what it is. It's really a setup, because yes, you can certainly ask these other questions, and you should. But the reason I like this question so much, and I use it very often, is because when you ask that question, normally the answer that I get is my parents, were my best role models. My fourth grade English teacher, my high school basketball coach. It has something usually to do with family or school. So here's what's awesome for XBSS with this. So you get that information, right? Whatever they say, doesn't matter who they say. So on a future visit, you're visiting with Rich and Kathy, and you say, "Hey, Rich, hey, Kathy, you've been so supportive of our schools over the years. Have you ever thought about, doing something in memory of your mom and dad?" It can be that easy, right? Or if you don't, something to honor or memorialize are two good words. And I tell you what, there's a power of influence there. It's something about a donor getting outside of themselves to honor and just to get out of themselves to create a greater, trying to find the right word, but just to magnify that somebody else in their life made them who they are, and they want to honor that, and they want to recognize that, and it's really neat to see that come to fruition. So again, when asking these questions, make sure you pause, but don't play the game like, okay, first one who talks loses. You don't need to do that, but just really let that sink in for folks. Next thing I want to talk to you about is how you can become their most trusted advisor. Jeremy, we're not advisors. Well, kind of. And here's what I want to share about that. So when I went through this CAP course, which is the Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy, it's through the American College, we read a book. We read a book that was called The Right Side of the Table. Where do you sit in the minds of the affluent? And it was written by a couple of brothers, Scott Fithian and Todd Fithian. They're a couple of financial advisors. And the premise of the book, they were essentially saying, not if you go to your estate plan attorney and you talk to them about how you want to, create your will, they will maybe say something like, "Hey, do you want to leave anything to charity? Or do you want to leave? What do you want to leave to your kids?" The in-depth on the charity part perhaps isn't there for most. So you, development officer, and perhaps even head of school, if you're on this visit, don't worry about maybe how to construct that as much as finding out the why. Because here's what the Fithian brothers said. They said, if you can learn their why, why they would want to make XBSS a beneficiary of their long-term plans. If you can learn that and really get to the heart of why they would want to support you, and by the way, it doesn't even have to be long-term. It can be, a gift today. If you can learn the why, then you and their advisors can execute the how. So that's the nice thing. Listen, gift planners are in the service industry. We offer opportunities, solutions, and expertise. We can't execute, but we can certainly provide information that they maybe never heard from their financial advisor or estate planning attorney. So here's just a few bequest facts I want to share with you. Just to, I think I'll give you some an idea of how this can help XBSS long term. 90% of all plan gifts are bequest, which means very simply, a donor says, I would like to include XBSS as, 25% of my IRA, or for $100,000. It's very simple, right? That's 90%. So that's what we do here at Boys Town. We just try to keep it simple and provide the information for donors to do that. Majority of comes from wills executed after 75. I mean, if you stop to think about that, it makes sense. Lose a spouse, retirement, maybe some kids are doing better than you anticipated, so donors don't leave them money. So they're always shifting. They're always shifting. But if you're not there in front of them to talk about it, then XBSS misses out on that slice of the pie. And that's all you're looking for usually. Excuse me, usually is a slice. Now, how do you decide who are those good prospects to ask? Well, I often when people find out what I do for a living, they'll say, oh, you just talk to all the rich people, Jeremy. I said, well, sometimes. I said, but really what I'm looking for is people who like us. That's where I start. Loyalty is number one. Now, here's the great thing about XBSS, what you guys have going for you. So Boys Town is not a first-person connection. Our donors, they didn't go to school here. Their parents didn't go to school here. They didn't go to church here. They give because they saw the movie in 1938 with Spencer Tracy and Mickey Rooney. They give because their parents gave, or they give for a smattering of other reasons. But if you have that loyalty, if you find development officers, if you find in that database, you see alumni who've been given for like 5-10 years or more consistently, that's a really good plan giving prospect. Now I'll share with you some other facts that will help with this. Single with no children, more opportunity, 65 and older. I know this all sounds really crass, but hey, if we're paid to raise money and do some things right, you want to go to the right people. That's what bank robbers do, right? They go to banks. That's where the money is. I think a lot of times people forget about volunteers. I imagine at XBSS, you have volunteers in some way, shape, or form. Those folks, they like you. They're good folks to take for a cup of coffee or out to lunch and get to know, and they're wonderful plan giving prospects. So maybe some of your storytellers, because stories usually are one of the best ways to inspire and show effectiveness of how their support through their work, their wealth, their wisdom can make a difference for an organization that they love. So I'm going to share with you one of the greatest tips I ever received from a gentleman named Jeff Comfort. He was the head plan giving guy for Georgetown, probably about 20 years ago. He led this is a big difference. It was either a $1 or $2 billion campaign. And then from there, he went to Oregon State, and he's either still there or consultant now. But I remember asking him early on in my plan giving career, what really helped him? What were some tricks, or there's no tricks in this, but what were some things that were effective for him to get the plan giving conversation started, or to find out where donors are at? And so he said, he gave me this summary. So it's going to sound like this. Hey, Bob. Hi, Linda. Hey, thanks so much for letting me drop by and visit with you in your living room today. As I mentioned on the phone, I was going to share a few updates on how Boys Town's doing and our kids, and just have a nice visit. First of all, I just want to share with you that we completed our new school. It was a $45 million effort. Thank you for your part of that. And I'm happy to say the doors open in August and the kids are loving it. Oh yeah, we started this new program called Successful Futures. And we learned at Boys Town that not all kids are ready to go back home after they graduate high school. So we got this new program that helps them accelerate and get acclimated to life after high school. Oh, and let me tell you about Let me tell you about Bill and Marge. Bill was a construction guy. Marge, she was a nurse all of her life, couldn't have kids. They adopted two of their own. It was the neatest thing. They did, they made a provision in their long-term plans for $500,000 for Boys Town because they just loved our kids so much and our mission and our story. Isn't that amazing? And again, it's not who talks first loses, but just give a pause after a story like that. And by the way, if you're kind of new at playing giving or haven't done it yet, just use a story that you've found very inspiring from somebody who gives on an annual basis or gave for some project. Because again, you can utilize that for gifts now as well as in the future. But that's really kind of neat. It's neat to just watch how people respond to that, because they'll either kind of drop their head and be like, mm-hmm, and they won't say anything. So don't make it awkward. Just keep talking, go to the next topic. Or they'll do that reflective moment and just let it sink in a little bit, and then they'll come back and ask a question, and away you go. Kind of neat. All right. Now, I mentioned earlier, it does take courage to be simple with plain giving. So I'm going to just share with you again some questions that you can use and that can be very effective in just trying to find out if XBSS is a part of their long-term plans. And by the way, I use that term more often than not, long-term plans. People know what you mean by that. I don't get too technical with, their estate plan, or I just like to soften it a little bit, but find what works for you. Now, I do want to point out on the very last bullet point, it says, what do you want to do with your money? It's pretty direct, right? Don't ever ask that question on a first visit. That's not the time to ask that. I'll share with you how I used it, because you got to kind of know your donor, right? Some people are just very gruff or direct, and some people are the opposite. But here's one example of how I used that. It was on my third visit with George in North Carolina. He was widowed. His wife died from Alzheimer's, and he had a few kids. And I remember him always telling me about his car collection. And I asked him about it on this third visit. He goes, "Well, let me show you." And I wasn't aware it was in one of his bigger garages behind his house. So we went back there. He had like 5 or 6 gorgeous classic cars. And we're looking at them all, and he's pulling off the covers, very proud. They're just in pristine condition, right? They're just beauties. And George is 85, okay? So I'm like, and he shared with me, he can't drive these anymore. Can you imagine that? Like, oh. So I said, "George, this is amazing. Like, what do you plan to do with these? What do you want to do with these?" I said like, what do you plan? What's your plan for these? I didn't say after his life. I didn't say now. I just said, what's your plan with these? He gave a big sigh like that, and he's like, "I don't know." He's like, "I really don't know what I want to do, because I don't think my kids will take care of them. I don't know if I want to auction them off. I'm just not really sure." The quick, unfortunate ending to that story, before I could have another visit or phone call with him, because at the end of that, I was picking up some cues on our next phone call. He was repeating questions. Anyway, long story short, he too ended up having Alzheimer's. So it just kind of goes to show too, that timing is a lot of these things that you can and can't control. I mean, a lot of times you can. It's on the donor's time and dime. But if you don't ask, you don't get. Well, you certainly don't know, and you also won't always get. But both those are really good questions, just to kind of find out what they have in mind. And by the way, if you ask them, "Hey, if you don't mind me asking, what do you ultimately plan to do with your life insurance plan, IRA or 401k?" And you would ask that if they were talking about it. And they know why you're asking. It's okay. They brought it up, right? And then they might share with you, "We're thinking of leaving it to all of our kids, but geez, now that I have you here today, Deb, maybe I'll leave XBSS in there. I don't know. Holly, appreciate you asking, because we've been thinking about that. I don't know. Let's talk some more about that." So the key is just to pick up on the cues and clues of what they're mentioning and how you can follow up. So it can also be as simple as asking these questions. And I think I alluded earlier. Let's say, for example, you're meeting with a couple and they've been given a certain amount of money every year. So if they would want to ever consider that second bullet point about endowing their gift, it would sound a little bit like this. Hey Rod, hey Doris, you've been giving $5,000 a year for quite some time. To keep that going in perpetuity, we'd be honored if you consider an estate gift of $100,000. And then be quiet and just see what they say. See if it's something that they consider. They can go all sorts of different directions from there. Maybe it's not that much, maybe it's less, maybe it's more. Maybe they're okay doing just what they're doing. But now you know. But if you don't ask, you don't know. So that's a great way to try to find that out. So again, you don't have to be a plan giving expert to ask. You can find one question, hopefully, with what I'm sharing today to kind of utilize that to find out what people think of XBSS long term. Okay, we're coming down the home stretch. Saving one of my best for last here. Because if you're ever curious if a couple's got XBSS in their long-term plans, this is how you would frame it. I use it almost every time. And I actually got this from Ann Melvin. She was with Harvard University. I heard her at a conference about 15 years ago, and I think she's her own consultant now. But it would look and sound a little bit like this. Hey, Bill, thank you so much for your support to our schools over the years. Many donors who have been as loyal as you decide to put, XBSS in their long-term plans. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts about that? So I don't guarantee many things, but I'll guarantee you're going to get one of three responses. I guarantee it. The first one's going to look like this. Hey, Jeremy, thanks for asking, but our estate plan is final. It's all going to our kids and our church. Hey, we'll keep giving. Okay. All right. Now you know. Here's the second response you're going to get. Brother Richard, I've never considered that. Tell me more. I'm just, kind of thinking about my will these days, about revising it, and your question's well timed. And then here's the third one. This is the best one. Liz, Zverian Brothers is already in my estate plans. Hey, all right. Well, high five, thank them. But then that is a great way to make sure you're acknowledging and recognizing what they're doing. And I would never come back. Make sure you don't ever come back. If they say Zverian Brothers is in their long-term plans, XBSS, don't ever come back and say, how much? That's not the time or place for that. You want to know. Now, you guys want to hear the Boys Town way, how we do this? It's kind of slick. I don't like to use that word, but if you want to know, if you want to get to that, it doesn't have to be on that visit. It can be in the future. So you can come back on a second visit and say, Mike, you were sharing with me that on our last visit that XBSS is already in your estate plans. And again, I'm just so grateful for that. At XBSS, we have different levels of acknowledgement and recognition, with $10,000 or more being one of them. Just curious if you think your future gift falls in line with that. Now, between me and my team asking that question, I think we've only had 2 people ever say, I'm not going to tell you. Everybody else has usually not only shared, yes, it's more than 10,000. I'd say probably 75% have been very detailed with what that amount is going to be and where it's coming from. Yeah, Jeremy, we have you in our IRA for 25%. We made a flat out bequest of $175,000 for Boys Town, something like that. But that is a great setup and a really soft, meaningful ask to find out where they're at. It's worked really well for me. Stewardship, we're all very familiar with this word, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it is very important, and we should always be cognizant. And I say which one about Bezos, but I just like his quote, because he talks about, hey, if you're not helping them out, if you're not giving them good service, that school down the street is, or their university, or their grade school, or the local, food bank and such. So it's just a good reminder that once they tell you that XBSS is in their long-term plans, continue to steward that. At least once, twice a year, thank them, take them to lunch, because remember, they're changing their plans, and you want to stay in it. Okay, nobody's probably heard of this gentleman. He's a sociologist, Anthony Campolo. And I want to kind of end on a softer side and really the heart, what I feel is playing giving. He did this survey with 50 people, well, probably because they're over the age of 95, that's all he could find, but he found 50 people, he asked them one question. If you could live your life over again, what would you do differently? And he said 3 things consistently emerged. Number 1, they would risk more. No surprise, right? I mean, as you're kind of looking back on life, you're probably like, well, I should have asked that person out. I should have tried bungee jumping. I should have, it's easier to say on the back end of life, right? So that was interesting. Here's the second thing that they said. They said they'd reflect more. And again, that makes sense. Some of the greatest minds over the course of time have done that. And I think a lot of people do it in retirement on the rocking chair of life, do a lot of reflecting. So that was good, especially for those of us who are not retired yet. But look at this third one. Development officers, take note. They would do more things that would live on after they were development officers. If you're like me, the first time I saw that, I'm like, oh my gosh, if that isn't a very clear sign that people they want to be remembered, or they want to remember somebody else. But really they're wanting to do something that will go on for in perpetuity for for throughout time. And what better place than their school who formed them. So you guys, you are sitting in such a good position as a school. People love their schools, right? Most people do. So there's, again, this is just my pass to you to say it's okay to ask, because they're waiting for somebody to ask them. They're waiting. They don't want to listen. They don't want to go to their estate planning attorney. They fret having to do that. All right. It's not comfortable. They don't make it comfortable. They don't tell you how you can be charitably inclined and do all these things to live on after they die. That's you, development officer. You got this. You can do this. And by the way, board of trustees, head of schools, if you recognize people like that, let your development officer know, like, this person's been doing so much good for all their life. Have you ever thought about talking to them? So I just want to, in summary, continue to maximize your school's development efforts. Take serious consideration what we talked about today. When we talk about plan giving, it doesn't have to be this, very time consuming, hire all these people. Listen, I've given you so many great pointers and questions that you can find out when you're doing just a regular meeting with these folks. It can be that easy. I don't like to use the word easy either, but it can be that simple. All right, that's a fair word. It can be that simple, as I just mentioned here, right? Plan giving. And it is a team effort. So just remember, there's a collaborative approach here with marketing and board of trustees to funnel ideas and solutions and names to the head of school and development officer. And even think of yourself, if you don't want to think of yourself as a plan giving person, I'll give you a few passwords here. Think of yourself as a facilitator or collaborator with your donors. So rather than like sitting across from them, right? Just visually, figuratively, and just picture yourself right next to them. You're wanting to help them. You're working beside them, not behind a desk. So take their side. You're going to build that trust, and you're going to have a great opportunity to build a plan giving program, or just bring in some future plan giving dollars through XBSS. So the way to do that, just consistent messaging. It can be little one-liners in your mailings or your website. Please remember XBSS and your long-term plans, in your will, trust, retirement assets, whatever you want to say. And then make sure you're visiting. There's no substitute for face-to-face visits. So I think I've exhausted my time. Thank you very much, Patrick. I think I'm open to any questions, and
Thank you,
I'm gonna jump out of here. Is that okay?
Yeah, maybe unshare.
Or unshare. Yeah, that's what I meant by that. Let me see if I do this right. Unshare. Hold on one sec. There we go.
Perfect. Very good. Well, we do have a few minutes. If I do want to open it up for a little Q&A, if anybody would like to throw anything past Jeremy.
Jeremy, this is John Westman. I'm chair of the board up at Nazareth High School in Brooklyn, New York. I've been working with other alums. The oldest of our alums this year is turning 75. And the classes of 66, 67, 68, 69 have just gathered its leadership team to put together a reunion of those first 4 classes that graduated from the school. That's going to happen in October of 2024. I've been thinking a lot about 24. I've been thinking a lot about this group that currently we have an interest of about 60 or 70 graduates who have said, keep me posted on this. My wife and I, or my son or daughter and I, may be interested in attending in the cases of the fellows who have lost their spouses. One of the things I would like to be having the team think about is how to broach this idea. And I'm wondering if that's a venue that we should raise this at in a kind of a presentation way, or whether or not we should just simply take that list and work those people one-on-one for this sort of endowment for the future. I think there is potential of the 60 or 70 that have responded to us. About 35 are already givers, and half of them are multiple year givers from the analysis that I have done in looking at the names. So just some reflections on this, and I can contact you off camera on this and ask you follow up on that. Just your thoughts.
Yeah, well, so you discovered that there's some consistency of giving with this group, so that's good.
Right.
But what first came to my mind, John, was know your audience.
Right.
So I think you could certainly mention it. I would keep it tight. I'd keep it very brief. A brief mentioning of what you're expanding upon doing, what you're encouraging folks to consider. I just keep it, pretty brief. Maybe in the future, you have somebody come up and give a testimony. But if you're just starting it off, kicking it off, I think you again, know your audience. I think you could have a brief mention, but then then you got 60 or 70 folks that you can ask that question whenever you visit with them in the future.
Right. Okay. So go light at the event, but
I would, because the event is it's a reunion, right? They're coming back to have fun. Yeah, and don't be afraid either, John, because it's I'm here in the Midwest. Maybe ask some of your peers as well. They're up there, like, what are their thoughts? What have they done? Yeah. That's one thing I would do. Just test the waters a little, or get some feelers out there from other folks, what they do. But listen, if you don't, in Plant Giving, we're always talking about planting the seed. So if you can just plant the seed with a first sentence or 2 or 3, you've done your job.
We'll have some giving opportunities for them at a table there and whatnot. And one of the light touches would be simply a poster on Planned Giving or estate giving, just to raise the notion. Anyway, thanks for your thoughts. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Jeremy, just one last question from me, because I know several of our development directors will probably be watching this after the fact. We do have schools where the advancement efforts, it's a one-person shop. Boys Town, you guys are blessed that you can concentrate largely on estate planning, but I know you've walked these shoes as well. I mean, any guidance to the development personnel who are a one-person shop and they're trying to do the annual fund, they've got the golf tournament coming up, they've got their gala, and oh, by the way, let's throw estate planning on top of it. Just thoughts, reaction to how somebody could give this proper attention, knowing they got a lot else on their plate.
Yeah, you again can't do it all by yourself, but you can certainly utilize messaging. So something that's, when I worked at a church, at the mother church, the cathedral in Omaha, St. Cecilia, we just put a one-liner in the bulletin. Please remember St. Cecilia in your will. It was in there every week, all the time. So there's a blurb like that. You can put something on your website, in your mailing, something at the bottom that would show out. But again, Patrick, I think my encouragement, my excitement is you can just find one of those conversation starters that I was sharing. I think each development officer could just kind of find a question that works well for them, they're comfortable with using when they're talking with these folks, to ask. It doesn't, and you're right, it's not Boys Town where we have a department we can just focus and we have all these different leave behinds and material. But if you can create something that just, like I mentioned earlier, that this, card like this that just kind of has, a picture of our, of our good work on one side, have the information on the other side with that your school's your tax ID number, just information for the lawyer. That is a good leave behind piece as well. So I guess it wouldn't be a big program as much as just individual touches when you're already visiting with folks.
Very good. Well, Jeremy, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and being part of this call. And I do want to thank all of you for tuning in, and for those that end up watching this recorded, again, we thank you for your time. So appreciate everybody's efforts, and I'll see many of you on our travels around school visits and board meetings. So Jeremy and I are going to stay on and talk Yankees, Red Sox for a little bit, but for the rest of you, great seeing you. Have a great night.